following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
This is Talkin Cowboys. Streaming live from the Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
First down. Handoff. Elliott plowing to the goal line. Barry, sacked by Lawrence. Prescott keeps it, and he bangs it in for the touchdown.
It's 11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning, which means it's time for another edition of Talkin Cowboys. Welcome in to the respective SWBC Mortgage Studios in our various locations throughout the DFW area as we get set for another edition of Talkin Cowboys here on DallasCowboys.com. Kyle Yeomans alongside Heckma Harrison, Isaiah Stanback, and the great Rob Phillips. And boys, the coaches are back in the Star. We've got feet on the ground in the Star. There are personnel that are back at the team facility as of Friday, and we're getting ever so closer to having football back in Texas. Thank goodness. Well, because training camp is coming up in about a month, so we've got a little over 4 weeks until we really start getting into what football could mean for the NFL coming up in the next couple of weeks. But Rob, is that just exciting to hear again, the fact that we've got boots on the ground at the Star again?
It's definitely progress. You know, it's my understanding that last Friday, the first day the coach could get back in, at least part of Mike McCarthy's staff was going to be there. And there were reports that that Mike was back in Texas. This is how strange this offseason has been. Mike McCarthy he took the Cowboys job in January after leading the Packers for a dozen years, but he's been in Green Bay since late April, getting ready for the draft, staying home with his family, sheltering in place, and not back here, getting started. But again, it just speaks to everything being virtual, and obviously the players still in that virtual setting at least through Friday, and so we'll see what happens there. But just to get face-to-face with some of his staff and start to kind of talk about the things and plans they have in person, that's got to be a step forward, right?
I think it definitely has to be. And Heckma, I was going to kind of go to you here in a second, but talking about just the fact of having all of the coaches back in one specific location, what kind of positivity and what kind of experience does that kind of help moving forward in the fact that you actually can walk down the hall and have conversations again?
Yeah, obviously COVID-19 has everybody in disarray with how to get their organization back started. And you see the Cowboys doing this just like the rest of America in phases. And I'm sure for Mike McCarthy and his staff, these guys are really excited about getting back in the building and physically being able to, I guess, once that we get to the next phase, to be able to talk to these, put their hands on, well, I can't say put your hands on the players, but socially distance from the players to be able to get some type of get on the same page with one another. But when I was looking at the conference call from a couple of weeks ago, and Rob, you were talking about this, he's been in Green Bay. As the coach of the Dallas Cowboys has been in Green Bay for months, and not having that opportunity to be here and just, guys, we would have had a couple of OTAs would have been, wrapped up here. A couple would have been a week ago. And so implementation of plans and all of that, I know that Mike McCarthy is just got to be chomping at the bit and excited about being back in the building with his staff.
Isaiah, would this be exciting for the players as well?
Yeah, it's exciting, man. Unfortunately, we've lost so much time. But, it's time to get to it. Coaches will be in the building. Players will be in there soon enough. And it's time to roll. It's time to, get used to the facility for all the rookies, because that's a whole new thing as well, especially in a facility like the Star. Just getting, familiar with your surroundings. And like we talked about last week, I can't foresee us really going to California this year. I think that it's enough with everything going on. So they need to get used to this environment. And then they need to get used to their coaches, talking online. And talking in this video format like we're talking right now is one thing, but when you're coaching, get off in your tail in person, it's a little bit different. So I'm looking forward to it. I know those guys are, and they just need to hurry up and get in the building and get to work.
And, of course, news raining down last week that the Cowboys will indeed be having training camp in Frisco. Teams told by the NFL to have their training camps at their respective facilities. And the league also sent out a memo this week talking to teams regarding players returning. And it ends up going into 3 tiers. And, Rob, I'm going to go to you quickly here in just a couple of moments to kind of clarify this. But ultimately, the 3 tiers of club staff members into restricted areas of the team facility. Tier 1, players and necessary personnel. Then you've got Tier 2, that's essential personnel that are close proximity of those players. Tier 3, essential facility, stadium, and event services. Those are the 3 tiers. Kind of go into that, Rob, and how does this kind of piece together a puzzle of what is a very intriguing yet confusing return to action for these players?
Well, I think the heart of it is just it's all about social distancing, as Heckma just said. Whatever it takes to ensure that everybody's safe in terms of when they're in the building. Now, obviously, when you get on the field, there's got to be physical contact. It is football. But when they're in the building, how do you keep the players in an environment where they're safe and everybody's safe? So that's where I think the tiers are from. Just reading that memo. But yeah, everything you go through that memo that the NFL Network released, and most of it is built around physical distancing and talking about the locker rooms that have to be 6 feet apart for every player. And actually, the Cowboys locker room is so big, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But there are certain aspects and protocols to this thing that you wonder around the league. This is going to be a challenge logistically for teams to set up these protocols in their buildings to adhere to all of these things. And they're saying too, don't have in-person meetings if you can. Have virtual meetings. And so the Star is such a big campus, I think they can get around a lot of these things and adhere to them. But this is the new normal, guys. This is just where we are, at least for this season.
Rob, I think those things are going to last for about 2 weeks. Realistically, the guys are gonna once guys are in person, coaches are gonna have to get in person. They can't go be in the same building virtually. It's unrealistic. I hope that obviously they abide by the rules and all that, but just a realistic terms, man. The guys are going to be talking with their coaches. Hopefully, they're wearing masks or whatever it is they need to do to be safe. But I mean, this is football, man. This is football. It's close quarters. And, as you already attested to, guys are going to be getting hit. Guys are going to be getting, touched physically. So, we have to keep some form of reality when we start talking about, being COVID conscious in sports. We just pray and hope that everybody's safe.
And Rob already mentioned the large locker room and how that's going to kind of play a factor into it. Heckman talked about how it is football. You're going to have physical contact, but there is also a little bit of an aspect of the strength and conditioning that's intriguing as well throughout the memo, saying that only 15 players at a time are in one spot conditioning or in strength training kind of together. And Heckman, does that concern you at all about the fact of maybe having that team camaraderie and that chemistry moving into what would be a training camp?
Man, I don't care if it's 15 players at a time, 2 players at a time, how far they got to be apart from one another. Let's just start some football, please. For me and my subconscious, I need it. I read the same thing, 15 players at a time. I think that it's imperative that the Cowboys have some type of idea of the type of condition that these guys are in. And that's the first thing, because I believe last week Isaiah said it really loud for the people in the back about soft tissue injuries. And those soft tissue injuries are, Isaiah, hey, it's hamstring, quad, hip, groin, you name it. Any of those injuries, when you haven't had guys in your system getting those rigorous workouts that they get from these NFL conditioning coaches and strength and conditioning coaches. So I feel like it's very important. I think it's no matter how many guys you can get in at a time, just to get those strength and conditioning tests going so you can see where your team is physically.
Anything's better than what we've had, I guess, over the past virtual offseason, the past couple months. Anything is better than working out in your own home. The fact that you even can get up to 15 players is encouraging. Now, Isaiah, from a player standpoint, whenever you're in the middle of June, I mean, we're in the second week of June at the moment, right at the beginning of the second week, and you normally, like Heckma said earlier, OTAs wrapped up, rookie minicamps in the rearview mirror. Yeah. What are you looking at from a player perspective of where you should be right now moving into the season and the upcoming schedule of the offseason?
I think as a player, I think it's going to be very important for guys to recognize and acknowledge the fact that it's unrealistic for me to think I am where I should have been had we had OTAs, right? So hopefully that made sense, right? So you can't put yourself in such a position to say, okay, I should be here, or I should be in this much condition, or I should be this far along. You shouldn't. You really shouldn't, right? You do the best that you could with the circumstances you were handed, but the reality of the matter is COVID-19 slapped everybody in the face, right? So everybody's behind the 8 ball. Everybody's behind on their install, right? Cowboys a little bit more because they're incorporating a new system on both sides of the ball in all 3 phases of the game, right? So mentally they're going to be behind. Physically, they're going to be behind because they haven't been practicing, right? And you can't, I don't care how hard you train, trust me, as a personal trainer now, own my own performance facility, it doesn't matter how hard you train, it's not practice, right? So don't put these unrealistic expectations on yourself to think that you're going to come in and be like, oh yeah, well, I should be coming out of OTAs this week and I'm going to be ready for camp. No, you're not. Just do the best that you can. Do the best that you can and be safe.
You're so right, Isaiah, about those soft tissue injuries, because you always worry about guys pulling a hamstring, something like that early in camp, especially in a normal camp where guys are coming off of some type of layoff. Because there's no substitute for football shape. I don't know if we brought this up previously on the show, Isaiah. I know 2011 was the lockout year.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can relate to? I know this is totally unprecedented, but guys not being able to be in the building and trying to train on their own. What was that like for you? I mean, is there something that you can relate to what these guys are going through right now?
Yeah, I guess I can relate to it in a sense, man. In regards to, it's funny. I took my dogs on a run this morning, and I took them on the same path that I used to run, the same hill, the one hill that you can find in Texas. But I took them on that same path, and it was reminiscent of that off season. And when I was having to train myself, right, I didn't have access to the facilities. I was going to, the open gym formats that everybody has memberships to, and I was in there doing my ladders and doing my strength training, and everybody's looking at me sideways, and so I can imagine some of these guys are doing the same things, but it's different, man. It's different, and as you're attesting to those soft tissue injuries, and everybody that's out there listening, you're like, well, these guys should be able to work hard, lift hard, and prepare themselves physically. Yes, until a 250 or 300 pound man starts pressing on you at really weird angles, right? So you can't duplicate that enough, and so I'm sure these guys are in shape and they're ready to roll, but be prepared, for these little injuries here and there, and I can only imagine that Jim and Brett and all those guys are prepared for that.
Isaiah, where's that one hill at? I just want to know, because I'm sure during this time it's pretty busy.
There are no hills in Dallas.
You drive all the way to Austin? Is that where the hill was?
Absolutely, that's all there. Only in Austin. I went down Austin and back.
Had to go all the way to I can't even remember what the state park is out in El Paso to get some running in. But one other thing about kind of getting ready and finding a way to I guess get your body set for those hits as much as possible. You're really going to find out who wants it and who doesn't with these teams heading into 2020. And much like the 2011 lockout, it's going to show who is disciplined, who has got at least that extra edge, that competitive edge. I kind of want to say Mamba mentality a little bit here, Kobe Bryant, of course, but I think there's going to be a little bit of that separation from the teams that really have a strong core and the ones that don't.
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. When you start talking about Mamba mentality with these guys, this is how they this is their livelihood. This is what they do. The veteran guys are the ones that I'm sure are going to come into camp ready to go. But like Isaiah said, there's no simulation for football. You can't knock on enough doors to get a pickup game going that's going to simulate an NFL game. But for those coaching staffs that are out there, the guys that have had some tenure, the terminology is the same, and especially with guys that's been with them for a while. For Mike McCarthy, the one thing that I feel is very unique, he's the one coach in this that even though he's a new head coach, he's a new head coach with obviously the Dallas Cowboys, he's he comes into this already with a background of having last year not coaching the team, but simulating and and already putting together his game stuff for game tape and breaking down and doing things like that. So this situation is probably most tailor-made for a guy like Mike McCarthy, since he's already spent a year away from the game just prepping and getting those game plans together without actually having a team. And I think for all 31 other coaches, they've been doing the same thing. They haven't had a team. And so I feel really confident in the experience that Mike McCarthy's had, a year away from the game, and just him staying sharp is going to give him a leg up on everyone else.
That's a great point. Heck, he said he was going through old notebooks in his garage, old scheduling and just trying to find every edge that he can from his experience. And I mentioned the lockout. That's another thing too. I mean, he's been through that in terms of getting a team back together on a truncated schedule and trying to, press forward. So I think, there's a lot of talk in the offseason about should the Cowboys go hire a college coach, a star college coach. It turns out, I don't think you could have made a better hire in terms of the circumstances this team is in right now.
That's an outstanding point because, when you look at the amount of coaches that were on the market that have won a Super Bowl and have been to the mountaintop and have also been through a lockout, it's a very short list. It's a short list, and it's one of the reasons why players, when you talk to them about this specific issue, have said that things have been extremely organized over the course of the offseason. They've been very impressed as to how efficient these virtual meetings have actually turned out, as opposed to really kind of the expectations going into it. And so that's a credit to Mike McCarthy and his entire staff and what he's been able to do throughout this offseason. Now, do want to kind of spend a couple of minutes here at the end of this first segment to talk about protest to progress. And it's a video statement up on DallasCowboys.com outlining the organization's standpoint on the recent protests and kind of change that has been happening in our country over the last couple of weeks. And voices are being heard, changes are being made. We're seeing progress. We're seeing everything kind of falling a little bit more so into place than it had been previously. And Heckma, I know you can speak to this as well. You and I have talked off air about this quite a bit, but the fact that changes are being made and voices are being heard, it's a great movement to protest to progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the Dallas Cowboys released that video, I was, swelling with pride just seeing it. And I believe that the video was more about just saying that, look, we've been on, trying to make sure that we take care of this in our community, and showing, 2 years back with the ex-Dallas police chief and community leaders, the mayor of Dallas, and saying how the Cowboys, the team, was involved, and also the statement that Roger Goodell put out. I think all of this is phenomenal. It's change. It's where we want to start seeing it. People having these uncomfortable conversations about things that, look, man, like you said, man, you and I, Kyle, have had conversations about this, and I've imparted my wisdom to you on what I feel like when you ask me a question about what should I do or what's the next move. It's just, look, man, having the dialogue and starting to change the mind state and the narrative of everything that's been talked about. I think that's important. And, look, the NFL for a number of years has been split in two with this issue, and I'm just happy to see that finally that the voice of the players are being heard.
Isaiah?
Yeah. I had an opportunity last week here in Capel to speak at one of the peaceful protests. I had no intentions on speaking at it, but I spoke, and I shared some of the same sentiments that Heck's speaking on, that it's first of all, this stuff's been going on for a long time. It's been going on for a very long time. Just thankfully it's finally getting on video, and hopefully, with the recognition, with the acknowledgement, that we can start taking progressive steps. Right? It's a start. You hear a lot of people complaining about, well, why now? Why are they deciding to do this now? They should have been doing this back then. Yeah, true. Okay, facts. That's facts. But this is a start, right? And we have to start somewhere. So the NFL acknowledging that they were wrong, right? In a great sense. The conversations in the video that we're talking about on our website, those things are important. Those things are important because I remember times where, even as players, we used to get picked on by the police when we came home from 3 a.m. from a road trip game, and they start pulling people over left and right coming out off the runway. And it was like, why? So we've come a long way. There's a lot of things that were just unnecessarily done, and I hope that we as a country can start right now and acknowledge the things that are wrong and become better. And as a league, I think that we're in a better place now than we ever have been, because you're forced to face the facts. And when you're forced to face the facts, then you can address them, and then you can be better for them.
Preach.
Isaiah, I watched that video that you posted, and it was amazing. And it's the type of thing people of all races need to listen and learn about. Like you guys mentioned dialogue, and that's, for me, that's the biggest thing is to listen and open your mind more to what's going on. And I think to the Cowboys program that they've been doing for a couple years, the players have gone on ride-alongs, trying to have that discussion on where they stand and where the problems they're seeing. And I'll just say, for me personally, like on the show last week, heck, Isaiah, you guys talking about the challenges you face, like those are things that I need to hear and I need to listen to understand more about what's going on and have that dialogue, because the George Floyd death is a police brutality issue, but there's a larger scope of problems that we have to work towards, and it really is everybody's responsibility to listen and then try to affect change.
Absolutely.
Rob Phillips, that's why you my dog, Rob. That's why you my dog, Rob. I'm telling you. That's it.
Yep.
It was very well said. It's a bigger issue, and it's a microcosm of what has been an issue for pretty much human history. And so it's something that we kind of finally get a chance to put it into racism and to open our minds and to listen and hear these conversations, have that dialogue, and affect change. Now, there could be some changes coming up in training camp. Could Dak Prescott potentially lose his starting job? We're going to debate about that and talk about the rest of the training camp battles when we come back here on Talkin' Cowboys.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Essilor is a proud sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, helping fans see more and do more with our best vision solutions. Our lens technologies reveal a world more beautiful than you can imagine. For a limited time, get the Essilor Next Gen offer. When you buy the latest generation of Transitions lenses with select Essilor lenses, you can choose a second pair of clear lenses for free with qualifying frame purchases. Restrictions apply. Find a participating eye care professional by visiting EssilorUSA.com. Essilor. See more, do more.
Want to use what the pros use? How about the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black? Right now you can get the Jack Black Starter, a curated collection of Cowboys locker room favorites for just $10 with free shipping. The starter includes 4 Jack Black skincare favorites plus a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Go to getjackblack.com/Cowboys and use the code word TEAMJB. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys. The Jack Black Starter, $10, free shipping.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to...
Right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus!
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down, based on GWS One score September 2019.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
Welcome back to Talkin' Cowboys, coast to coast and around the world here on DallasCowboys.com. Kyle Yeomans, Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and our resident Super Bowl champion. I love saying that, Isaiah. Stand back. I keep saying that. I'm going to continue saying that because it's nice to say that we have
the champ is here.
Household. The champ is here. Yeah, you're exactly right. But before we get into the second segment, I do want to remind you, go online. Single game tickets are on sale now at DallasCowboys.com. Plenty of exciting games throughout the course of the 2020 season coming up, and you can go get your single game tickets on sale now to experience this season like no other at AT&T Stadium. Now, I teased going into the break training camp battles, and we're going to get to that here in a couple of minutes. I know I knocked Heckma off of his chair right before we went into break because I think he almost fainted. And we'll get to it, and I'll explain my reasoning, or not really reasoning, but I want to explain why it's even a question. However, I want to talk about training camp first to kind of get into the specifics of it being in Frisco. That was outlined last week, the fact that it will be in Frisco. It will be at team facilities. But I was asked a question on 105.3 The Fan, the great guys over at our flagship, Jared Sandler, Zach Wolchuk. I was on with them last Friday, and they asked me the question of facilities. Does that include potentially going down the road and using nearby local facilities for training camp? And Rob, you and I kind of spoke very briefly on this last night, but what is your opinion on the fact that if the Cowboys need an extra natural grass field, they could go to a high school or they could go to Toyota Stadium where FC Dallas plays just down the road?
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up to me because Mickey Spagnola and I had the same conversation. Like if they needed, because the draw of Oxnard, not only the weather, but that second grass field, they don't have that at the Star right now. They've got one, and then they've got the Ford Center. So it depends on what the league would say. I don't know if you'd have to go get permission for something like that, but you're right. I mean, there are other options around here, and it actually reminded me of 2003, Bill Parcells' first camp. It was my first camp covering the team. Indoors, Alamo Dome, turf, and he didn't like it. He didn't like that format, and he just wanted to get his guys outside, even though it was 110 degrees. He took them to a local high school in San Antonio to work out a little bit and have a practice or two. So I'm sure there's different ways you could do it. It just depends on whether, what the league would have to say. You probably have to get permission to do something like that.
It's just kind of interesting thinking of how confined it would be. Now, the Cowboys have a leg up on the majority of the NFL because the Star is world class. They have 3 fields, including 1 indoors, 1 turf, and 1 natural grass. So you have so many options, but you still want that extra natural grass field. It'll be interesting to see if they need to go elsewhere, and if they were able to go elsewhere, could they do it, or where would they go is kind of the big question moving forward. But specifically about training camp battles are always some of the best storylines whenever it comes to an NFL offseason, because you're looking at how the starting lineup could potentially change, who's going to emerge that wasn't necessarily a thought the year prior. I wanted to go into some of these training camp battles, and I wanted to start off by asking you guys, which one are you watching? I want to see just where you guys are gauging these NFL battles, and Isaiah, we'll start with you, but is there any specific battle that you're looking at heading into training camp?
I think the most evident one, obviously, is the cornerback position, right? I think that's going to be the most competitive, the one that's probably that we talk about the most throughout all of training camp, just because there's so many questions regarding it, right? I mean, you obviously picked up a couple great cornerbacks in the draft. You picked up a veteran in free agency. You have some established guys that were kind of making their mark as well. What are you going to do with the safety position? So things we've been talking about for the last 3-4 weeks. I'm looking forward to that, because unfortunately there's going to be some guys that are really good players that won't be there come the season, at least not on this roster. So I'm looking forward to that. And one thing I really want everybody to pay attention to is look who they get to practice against. Right, we talked a lot about the receiving core that we have here. We talked a lot about the tight end situation. Yeah. But when you have a great offense, the defense has to be that much better, right? And you get to face that every single day. So the competition, builds confidence, right? And then all of a sudden, players start making jumps that you weren't necessarily expecting, right? Because they have opportunity to face guys that they typically wouldn't face. So I'm looking forward to that cornerback position.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob. Take my point.
Well, I'm not going to take your point. I'm not going to take your point. I was going to ask Kyle, tell us about your tees. What position battle are you looking at here?
I'm getting to that. Now, okay, I'll go ahead and go into it since you put me on the spot here. I was approached.
You got Heckma falling out of his chair. Me too.
I did.
Damn.
I did. But here's the thing. I was approached this past week, and this is a friend of mine, and he came up to me and he goes, I think Andy Dalton's going to take the quarterback spot. I looked at him, and it almost knocked me out of my seat. I was like, what are you talking about? I get it that Andy Dalton has experience. He's been a starting quarterback in the NFL, but it kind of made me start thinking about, is this how some Cowboys fans are kind of what their mindset is going into the season, whether it's just exhaustion from Dak Prescott's contract negotiation, maybe it's just the fact that you have a starting or a backup quarterback rather that's more talented than any other backup quarterback you've really had over the past 2 decades. There are a lot of factors that go into it. I wanted to ask you guys, is there a possibility whatsoever that this could even remotely be true? Because I'm not on that side of the fence by any means.
Yeah, get your friend checked out, man. I don't know. I thought you had something for us on the tease. I thought you were gonna hit us with some breaking news, but no, man. Come on, guys, please. That's not up for debate. That's not. I mean, is it? Are we really gonna have that conversation?
Yes, let's have it.
Dude, there's no ways. I
think your friend's bored, man. He's been in the house.
Come on now. I mean, look, I tell you what, I'll entertain it this way. When you sign a guy, if let's say 2 things are on the table, Dak has a franchise tag or he signs a long-term deal. So either way, Dak is going to be making more than $30+ million a year, right? Mm-hmm. There is no way that the Cowboys are going to bench Dak Prescott making $30 million for Dalton. It's just not going to happen. Is the team. He is going to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys for years to come. I know that the contract has everybody's head in the blender. Look, man, COVID-19 and everything that's going on in the world has everybody a little crazy. So I forgive your friend for his question, all right? Because the world is crazy right now, but there's no way. Anyway, please, Rob, help me.
Oh, I don't need to help you. You said it all yourself right there. That was perfect.
I just wanted to make sure we squashed to this thing before it really grew into something unheard of.
Please.
I mean, the only way is if Dak Prescott didn't sign his franchise tag and they didn't get a deal done by July 15th and he wasn't at camp. And I don't see that happening. He's the guy, and as Heckma said, he's going to be the guy. There's nothing wrong with having a really good backup. That's what Andy Dalton is. He told us on the conference call, I know my role. I'm going to support Dak and help him any way I can. That's how it's going to roll. Mm-hmm.
And that's a negative ghostwriter for me as well. Dak's your dude. I mean, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how it goes down, he's your guy. But how awesome is it that Cowboys fans finally get to even have this discussion? The fact that they actually have a backup who's capable of starting. So should the world freaking go upside down, which is, I feel like we're halfway upside down anyway. Yeah. Should the world ever, just flip on its head, you have a backup who honestly is a legit starter and a proven starter in this league. So it's awesome to have that at your disposal. Obviously we've watched the Saints over the past years. They've done that. So I think that, they've kind of set the precedent for that. So now the Cowboys are in a great position.
Was that a Top Gun reference?
You like that?
You saw that? You saw that? Did you see him sneak that in? All right. Cool.
Now, I do want to ask this question specifically to Rob, because you brought up the July 15th deadline, and there's no incentive at the moment for Dak Prescott to potentially sign that long-term deal, because the only thing that helps him is waiting, because either Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes could end up making a deal and finding their long-term extension that ends up raising the price for Dak Prescott. Now, does that help or hurt your confidence level moving into that July 15th deadline? Because we're about a month away. Do you still think that he's going to sign a deal?
Until July 15th at 3 o'clock passes and there's no deal, I will continue to believe that ultimately a deadline will push progress forward in terms of talks. And just because we've seen it time and time again. We've seen it with Des Bryant in 2015. We saw it with Tank. Tank had sort of an artificial deadline with needing to get his shoulder surgery. They needed to get Zeke back in the building, get ready for the season. Deadlines make deals, and I'm not saying for sure it will happen, but it just has happened over and over again that when there is a deadline and something actually to work towards, that there'll be progress. I'm still optimistic about it for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rob.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, deadlines make deals. Stephen Jones's quote. And typically things like this get done at the last minute. So I just believe it's going to get done. It's inevitable.
And I think it goes down the first week. I think it goes down the first week that the guys are back in the building. That's my belief. Just off the standpoint that these guys need to shake hands, right? They need to shake hands, whether it's a 6 feet handshake or whatever it may be, right? These guys need to shake hands, and these guys need to look each other face to face, not over video, and say, "I'm your guy, you're my coach. Let's get this thing done. Let's put this behind us because we have enough things to worry about going into this year. So let's not be talking about contracts. I don't want to be a distraction to the team. You know what I want. I know what you guys want. Let's go. Y'all talk to my agent, figure this thing out. Let's go win some games."
So Rob's daughter is on the podcast right now.
You hear that?
Oh yeah. Well, I wonder if Andy Dalton is on her side, or if she's on Andy Dalton's side. Now, going back to
we're wrecking the whole thing. Go ahead, Kyle.
Now,
Go ahead.
Going back to
she just needs to eat.
Exactly. There you go. It's almost lunchtime. We're all hungry at the same time. We'll get some Papa John's or some Dunkin' Donuts. It'll all work itself out. Now, moving in back to those normal training camp battles that we kind of looked at before going to quarterback. I mean, Heckma, are you looking at the offensive line at all? I mean, I know the center position has been kind of turned over ever since the retirement of Travis Frederick. There's been a slew of names thrown into that conversation. Is Joe Looney kind of getting forgotten in the mix with Tyler Biadasz now in the fray and Connor McGovern, a third-round draft pick from last year?
Hey, Kyle, this is for you, man. That's exactly where I was going. The offensive line, doesn't it seem like 5 years ago that Travis Frederick retired as far as the news cycle for everything that's been going on? But that's a big concern for me is finding out what we're going to have at the offensive line. And Connor Williams is a guy that I'm interested in seeing how he attacks during training camp, because there are a lot of question marks looming over him, injuries and just matchup problems where teams were trying to expose him. And so I want to see him. I want to see the kid from Penn State that we don't know a lot about because he had a pec tear last year. There's going to be a lot of competition between that guard and center position, and also a few of the guys that we bought in through free agency. So, offensive line for me is a bigger, obviously not when number 70, 71, and 77. I'm not talking about them, but I'm center and guard is what I'm looking at. But also with the addition of Joe Philbin as the offensive line coach, you're talking about one of the geniuses of the league as far as offensive coordinators in the past. I'm just excited about the type of blocking scheme that they're going to come in with. If they do any inline or wide zone blocking for Ezekiel Elliott to allow him to pick his holes, I'm just excited about what the offensive line is going to look like, because that group has been, the linchpin or the dominating force on this team for a number of years.
You said you're excited about how the offensive line is going to look. Did you mean nervous? Because, that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing, because ultimately your left guard may be the odd man out of the center position spot. Whoever's going to win the center position is probably going to be the best out of that bunch, and then you move over the left guard, and that might be the second best in the bunch.
No, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, man, and I just feel like this. Looney has been there, he's done that, and we have tape to back up that he's bona fide. And so I think with the year last year, sitting behind Frederick, Looney he's got an axe to grind. This is his position if he wants it. So I feel like he's going to come in and be ready to prove and show, because all of the other pieces are there. So we're just talking about the center and the guard, and we have to get that taken care of. And we have veterans, guys that have been there and done that with Williams and Looney.
Yeah, I'm with you, Heck. I actually feel better, even though you have to fill that spot. Though you just mentioned guys that have been in the Pro Bowl every single year: Tyron, Zach Martin. Lyle Collins is on his way to being a Pro Bowl player. I really believe that. But they do have to fill those two spots. If I'm going with a competition spot besides those two, just the rotation on the defensive line, how that's going to work, because I think Alden Smith is going to play a lot. We'll see if Randy Gregory gets reinstated. Can Bradley Anai step in? Where's Tyrone Crawford fit in the mix? And I'm very interested to see what happens with Tristan Hill. Second round pick last year. A lot of talent. Didn't play much did not have a strong rookie season. But, man, you can't go back and it's hard to find a second-round pick in the history of this franchise last 20 years that just didn't have an impact at some point. I mean, right. Jacob Rogers in 2004, Gavin Escobar maybe.
Digging into crates.
I mean, really, that's like the only two I could find. So where can he find a spot in this rotation with McCoy and Poe and contribute? Like that's something I'm really watching for because he was kind of a Rod Marinelli guy. So where does he fit with this new staff?
Isaiah, is there any kind of at least thought process from a skills position standpoint on the worry of what an offensive line battle could end up being?
Nah, I mean, no. I mean, we haven't had to worry. We haven't had to worry about the offensive line here in Dallas for some time now. So I think however that shakes out, I think you're going to be perfectly fine. And that's obviously a group that's going to be highly competitive. But you got some dudes up there. You got some dogs. You got some established dogs up there that are going to hold it down, and they'll show them the way. The other dudes, again, going back to how competitive practices are going to be, you're going to find out who can play on that O-line and who can't, because think about who they're playing against every day. Right? So people forget about that. They're going to be practicing every single day in, day out, for hours on end against freaking 340-pound grown men that are proven in this league. So you're going to find out who can play and who doesn't want to play, right? It's going to be hot. I think this summer is going to be the doggone devil's playground out there. So, and I know that the McCarthy's going to put them out there and force them to see who wants this, because I'm coming in here, I don't have any time to lose. I need to know who's ready to roll with me and who's not. And to Heck's point, I keep forgetting how amazing this coaching staff is. I know I've talked about it in the past. We have some amazing coaches, and I don't want that to get swept under the rug. And we talk about Philbin, when you talk about Skip Pete, right? When you talk about these dudes, I mean Nolan. Golly, I mean, these guys are amazing. They've been in the game for a long time, and they have a lot of wisdom to pass on. And I think, no matter how competitive it is, I think all these guys, whether you're on the roster this year or you're going to another team, you're going to leave better than when you ever came in.
That's so true, because after McCarthy's introductory press conference, I remember Stephen Jones was talking in a walk-off, and he said they're still really, bullish about their roster. And so in their mind, they don't think from a talent standpoint they're that far away. It's Mike coming in with his experience, and then, like you guys said, I mean, your staff is just as important. Absolutely. You're teaching in your position coaches and obviously your coordinators, so it is a ton of experience. A lot of guys that have been head coaches in the NFL. Yeah, that's kind of rare to see.
And you look at Jim Tomsula, Joe Philbin, the fact that those two guys have two guys that may have more to prove this offseason, this training camp, more than any other player, and that's Connor Williams on the offensive line and Tristan Hill on the defensive line. I'm interested to see how each of those position coaches kind of find a way to maybe get the most out of each one of those two guys who haven't necessarily found their footing as second-round draft picks moving forward. Now, moving into this final segment, who will be the odd man out on this 40-burger offense? Is it going to be CeeDee Lamb? Is it going to be Michael Gallup? Or even Amari Cooper? Who is the guy who we are going to be saying is the third wide receiver moving forward? We're going to discuss that after the break. And while we're at it in the Top Gun references, Goose, Iceman, Maverick, and Viper will be right back here on Talkin Cowboys.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to?
Right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus.
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down, based on GWS One score September 2019.
To Dallas's frontline responders, thank you. To show its gratitude, Tide is offering free laundry services in Dallas to the families of frontline responders. Simply bring your laundry and your identification to Tide Cleaners, and they will wash it within 2 days. One thing less for you to worry about. While you take care of us all, Tide will take care of the laundry for the families of frontline responders. To learn more and find a location near you, visit hope.tidecleaners.com.
Essilor is a proud sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, helping fans see more and do more with our best vision solutions. Our lens technologies reveal a world more beautiful than you can imagine. For a limited time, get the Essilor Next Gen offer. When you buy the latest generation of Transitions lenses with select Essilor lenses, you can choose a second pair of clear lenses for free with qualifying frame purchases. Restrictions apply. Find a participating eye care professional by visiting EssilorUSA.com. Essilor. See more, do more.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
Fan experience for the ultimate Cowboys fan. Join Dallas Cowboys United and an exclusive DCU fan pack and member benefits. Membership start at only $20. Visit DallasCowboys.com/United to join today. Final segment here of Talking Cowboys on this Tuesday morning. So glad you're with us here on DallasCowboys.com or the respective podcast platforms. Kyle Yeomans, Heckma Harrison, Isaiah Stanback, and the great Rob Phillips. And we've got some training camp battles in the rearview mirror. We talked about a couple of those the last segment. We talked about what training camp is going to look like in Frisco. Now it's time to talk football, and it's time to get back to the X's and O's. We're going to be talking some X's and O's here in this final segment. I've got 3 questions for you guys. I'm going to start with you, Isaiah, on this first one because I think this is what I teased. This is a question that I think a lot of people are starting to kind of ask themselves moving forward. Is there a chance that Amari Cooper could be the 3rd wide receiver by the year's end on this Cowboys roster because of the way that Michael Gallup is ascending and the way that CeeDee Lamb could potentially play?
I'm going to go ahead and respond with you see the way that his bank account is set up. Yeah, no, this not possible. Even if those guys did start gaining momentum and start making plays, you still have to make him number 1. You're not going to pay him to be a number 3. I mean, this dude is making so much money now, and kudos to him. Get all the money you can get, but now you got to put up. Right, you got to run more than a go route. You got to run more than a deep post. So we're gonna figure it out. But I do think that these other guys will have an opportunity to shine. I think that the receivers are gonna kill it this year. But in terms of answering your question, Coop is numero uno, and he's gonna stay that way.
Rob,
go ahead, Heck. Go ahead.
You okay?
No, he said the way that Cooper's bank account is set up, no way. That's a perfect response, dog. I couldn't have done that better myself, man. It's, I think the Cowboys it's not a problem. I mean, they have an arsenal to work with. And, I believe that no matter how you switch these guys up, who runs the X, who runs the Y, who's out, doesn't matter. These guys are going to all have an opportunity to be impactful in the game plan. For CeeDee Lamb, what I'm looking for is just seeing how easily acclimated he can get with the playbook. That may be a problem for a rookie coming in that hadn't had OTAs and that opportunity to actually get familiar with the playbook. So doing little things in this offense like, quick screens, slant routes, things that just allow you to see his athleticism. I believe that's what Coach McCarthy is going to do for his rookie, just to get him in the rhythm of the offense. And those are easy things. A quick screen is just, like a long handoff for a guy like CeeDee Lamb. And so seeing that athleticism and taking advantage of that is first and foremost. But Amari Cooper is your ace. He's your lead dog. He's the one that sets the tempo for the wide receiver group. And, Isaiah, like you said, man, he has to do better than just, running those goals, in this offense. But with those other 2 guys, if that's the role that he plays where he's go, and everything is underneath, there are defenses that are going to fall asleep, and Amari Cooper's going to be wide open over the top. So they have a good problem with these 3 speedy receivers that are all going to be interchangeable by the time you get to the end of the season.
Yeah, Kyle, that's a negative ghostwriter as well. I don't see it. I think Amari's the guy. He talked about it the day after the season ended, though, that he has to be more consistent. And, his road-home splits were very different. For whatever reason, he wasn't as productive on the road. I will say one thing. I think Michael Gallup has the ability to become a 1A type of receiver just because of his talent level. He got 1,000 yards last year, and I forgot that he got a knee scope early in the season. And I missed a game or two, and then came back and had to kind of work himself back, and then productive, just kind of finishing plays. He had some drops last year, but he's got so much potential that I think CeeDee Lamb can fall into that third receiver spot just simply because I think the two guys ahead of him are so talented. And
it's interesting because you put Amari Cooper as that 1A. You have Michael Gallup as the 1B. You can't necessarily have it as a 1C, or I guess you could say 1CD. See what I did there. Now, the interesting thing I want to ask is, how do you get the weapons involved? How do you get everybody involved to where they're happy enough to where you're able to have that success? I know we've talked about the quote-unquote 40-burger offense before of just putting up points at an exploding rate, but whenever you've got three receivers like that receiving tight end and Blake Jarwin, and then two running backs that need their fair share as well, where do you start in terms of putting a potential offensive game plan together? I know it's easier said than done, but I still think it's a challenge for Kellen Moore.
You start by getting your three wide receivers that we just mentioned to block. You get those guys to block because Freaky Zeke is still the core of this team. We can talk about Dak all day long. We can talk about CD. We can talk about Coop. Freaky Zeke needs that ball in his hand. And if you can get your three receivers to go out there and block, then guess what? You can leave those guys out there all game, right? You're no longer, in 11 personnel, and everybody knows, hey, Cowboys are passing. No, these guys can be running the ball from 11 personnel, which is three wide receivers, one tight end, one running back. If you can be efficient in the run game from that set, then you can do whatever the heck you want to in the passing game.
How close are the Cowboys to having those three receivers being able to block? Because I know CeeDee Lamb, he's physical on the outside coming out of college, but where is he compared to Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper?
I mean, those guys have experience. They've been doing it at this level. So you have to put him in the category that he fits and that he's a rookie. And so you have to see what he can do. There will be no substitution for any of that, man, because you know what you have in the backfield with Ezekiel Elliott. So the demand is for every wide receiver that plays for the Cowboys to be able to run block. And so all of those things being considered, I just think that the Cowboys have to be very mindful of just setting the tempo. Tempo is going to be very important for this offense. I think that last year, a lot of times what happened is that tempo just got off and you saw drive sputter. Red zone efficiency also sputter. Those are just things that's where the difference is going to be. I was talking about Philbin at the beginning, at the first segment, and just saying about the kind of inline blocking that he likes to do with his offensive line. I think that all of those things are relative for this offense to be successful. But tempo is the number one thing that I think is going to be the thing that we all look to see the success that the Cowboys are going to have at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I don't know, Kyle, if you can worry. You can't go into a game saying we have to get X number of targets for this player, right? I mean, you want to get Amari Cooper involved. I mean, you're paying him for that, and he is so talented. But you do have so many weapons on this offense that I've said it before, it really can become a pick your poison type of offense as long as you are getting Zeke involved. I am such in agreement with that because he does everything can feed off of him. But there are going to be games where maybe Michael Gallup isn't as productive or Amari's not. Or maybe it's a Blake Jarwin game. Who knows? That is something Jason Garrett talked about when he was here that I did agree with, that you try to attack in different ways and you don't try to necessarily force things. Now, that only works if you've got a talented offense like they do here. So I think that is possible for them to do that.
And just to kind of clear up a couple of things, when you pay a player like this, right? Not only are you paying them because of their talent, right? But you're paying them for what they can potentially do to help you win a doggone Super Bowl. right? So if Coop becomes a doggone, somebody who's just running off coverage and allowing these other guys to eat, if that gets you to the Super Bowl, then hey, cut the check, right? And keep eating, right? So he doesn't have to be an absolute dominant player. He just needs to be able to do what he does best, right? And that's what the issue is going to be with this team, or the nice problem that this team has is, hey, how can I position guys to go out and be the best at what they do? I don't need you to do everything. I just need you to take care of this because I have these other guys to play a part in this, right? So that's what I foresee with this offense.
And if you think about the step forward that Dak Prescott took from 2018 to 2019, now you talk about the weapons that he has to throw to and the amount of step that he could take from 2019 to 2020. That's exciting to think about, because if you're a Cowboys fan, you're saying if he takes another leap, now he's got these wide receivers, now he's got these weapons around him. The sky is limitless whenever it kind of talks about whenever you talk about this offense and how they're able to find a way to get the job done in 2020. Now, moving to the defensive side of the ball, we got about 5 minutes left. How exactly are the corners going to be used? Because we've talked about Mike Nolan going with more of a prototypical bigger corner, a bigger secondary in general. You bring in 2 draft picks, second rounder Trayvon Diggs, fourth rounder in Reggie Robinson. But what exactly is this X's and O's defense going to look like from a corner standpoint? Are we going to see a lot more press man than we have in the past?
I don't think so. I don't think that you're going to have to. A lot of times the reason why you go man coverage is because you need to get some form of pressure on the quarterback. And if you're able to generate teams that are able to generate pressure on the quarterback with their front 7, typically you're a too high safety team, right? So if you're able to get that pressure with your internal guys, you literally take the stress of having to be amazing at corner, having to be amazing at safety, because you allow for those guys to play coverages like 2-man, where your corners can literally just hit an inside shade of a receiver and use the sideline as an extra defender because they have help over the top with the safety. So all of a sudden they don't have to be that great at coverage because they have the sideline and the safety helping them out while those other 7 dudes are going to work, right, on the quarterback. So I see us being more of a too high team at the core with the ability, obviously, to go man.
That's a great point, and that is, and I believe that having those different schemes for the cornerbacks is going to help your rookies and Diggs to be able to understand where his help is coming from. But also, you have to look at the schedule for the Dallas Cowboys and the kind of wide receivers that they're going to play. I dare say that anybody's going to go over and go man to man with Julio Jones. It's not going to happen, and so you're going to give your guy help over the top. So if they throw in anything underneath, you can be aggressive and jump it. I just think that with the style of cornerbacks that you have now, the ones that you've drafted and the guys that you've gotten through free agency, all of them have this one thing in common, and that's physical. And so you play to your strengths and not your weaknesses, and that's what Mike McCarthy has always talked about guys, is finding out what they do best and playing to those. And so I just believe that the Cowboys defense and especially coordinator Al Harris, they're going to play to those strengths. But don't fool yourself, guys. The Cowboys have got to give the appearance of pressure on defense. They have got to show, like, hey, we coming, even if they back out of it, because they have to make things happen. They have to make plays. They have to make those momentum-changing sack, strip, fumbles. All of those things are on the docket for the Dallas Cowboys defense this year.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. I mean, it's and the way they want to be more multiple, at least it sounds like that. You want to be able to disguise your coverages and do some different things. I don't think you want to just be strictly a press man team, even though, to your point, Kyle, that's the guys that they've brought in and drafted, and Worley, they're capable of doing that. But like Isaiah said, it's just you can play things different ways depending on matchups. And like Heck said, I mean, there are certain receivers on the schedule that you want to try to adjust to because I don't know if you just want to line up one-on-one and try to beat those type of caliber receivers all the time.
And I think you're going to see a little bit of a switch back and forth between also going a little bit smaller. You talk about some of the competition in the NFC East. Look at Philadelphia, for example. They go out and they take Jalen Reagor
a slot wide receiver who's just a speedster by the sense of the term, and he's gonna be in the slot most likely for Philadelphia. You're gonna need a guy like either Chido Awuzie or Jordan Lewis to get in the slot as a slot corner and cover throughout the course of the season. I think so.
I take Jordan Lewis all day in that matchup with Rigger. He's going to body him at the line of scrimmage.
Well, I don't know. Jalen Rager's a pretty good wide receiver.
He gonna body him at the line of scrimmage.
Okay, I think I would too. I like Jordan Lewis a lot. I think Jay Lou would go in and play admirably, but don't sleep on Jalen Rager. I hate saying that.
Body him at the line of scrimmage.
I hate the fact that he is on the Eagles, but he is a damn good wide receiver. Final question, really quickly, before we head out. Now, I'm writing a series on a positional breakdown of the running back position this week for DallasCowboys.com, and I started kind of looking at this third running back spot. And I know we haven't necessarily had to worry about a third running back recently because of Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott kind of taking up the majority of the time. Jordan Chun filled that role last year, and then you've got Olawale at the fullback spot. Is there really a big use for a third running back or a fullback in this offense moving forward with some of these undrafted free agents?
Your third running back is going to be the best special teamer.
Okay.
If he's going to make it, he's got to be, right?
Yeah. Simply put,
no real use.
I mean, there's a use because you need a third guy, right? Whether they're on practice squad or whether they're on a roster. But if you're going to have a guy on the 55-man roster now, I can't remember now. Then they have to be an absolute amazing GOAT status on special teams.
Right. Yes.
No.
Yeah, because I mean, Olawale can function as your third running back if you need him.
Yeah.
He can do some hybrid type stuff. I mean, he's not like Brian Broaddus used to call it. It's not a glass eating type fullback. But Kellen Moore loves his skill set for what it's worth. I mean, he thinks that they can use him in different ways. They just haven't really done it, and I guess that speaks to the amount of talent they have at other positions. But I kind of feel like, I mean, they two TCU backs are really talented. The practice squads might be more realistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I love both of them. I mean, because I'm here in Dallas, I got a lot of opportunity to see TCU's game. And Anderson and this Sewu, I'm going to butcher the last name, so I won't even attempt it. But there it is, my man. Both of those guys are awesome. Anderson, the Jet, is what they call him. I mean, it's hard to be called the Jet and go to the go and run a 4.6 40 in the combine. So that's, I think that may be one thing that may count against him. The other guy, Sewu, he's 6'3", 240 pounds. He may end up being a tight end for the Cowboys, so that may be his end on the team. But these guys are going to have to play out of their mind in order to, take a spot from Pollard or Olawale. It's not going to happen.
Why you put his 40 time out there like that?
No! See, it wasn't even like that, Isaiah. It wasn't even like that. I'm just saying they called him in a Jet and he ran a 4.6 and
Hey, when he sees you at training camp, don't say nothing, because he going to look at you, he going to be like, you the one that said my 40 time.
It's all love, man. It's all love, man. It's all love.
Alana Lua, though, Rob, you mentioned a glass-eating fullback. That's what he is. He's a guy who's going to lay down the shoulder and he's going to run you over because he is 6'3", 6'4", almost, and 240 pounds. He's a lot bigger than Olawale, but man, he can also catch the ball out of the backfield as well. Exactly. He's got some skill set there that might be intriguing moving forward for this offense. But that is going to do it here for this edition of Talkin Cowboys. Before we head out, I do want to remind you can follow each one of us on Twitter. You can go at Heckma_Harrison. You can follow Isaiah Stanback at I am Stanback, and then Rob Phillips, the great Rob Phillips, at RobPhillips3 on Twitter, and then I'm at Kyle_Yeoman. So for all four of those guys, we're glad you've been with us over the past hour and a little bit over. We went a little over today, but that's okay because Chris Beam he's getting paid regardless. So thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again next time here on Talkin Cowboys.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!